Yeah, I'm feeling connected to my higher self. I always seem to find this version when I'm by myself. I had no problem being alone, but they tell me every king needs a throne. But I don't want no fancy chair crown, I want a home. Thought you wanted.
Welcome to episode 15 of the Julio and I's podcast. For our loyal listeners out there, you're probably wondering why you don't hear Julio's voice to start this podcast, and that is because Julio will not be joining us on this episode, as our guest is my grandfather and Durfee High School legendary coach, Thomas Skip Karam. And the only way we could really do this interview was with me to go to my grandfather's house and do it in person. So it was really hard, just logistically with Zoom and everything, to get Julio into the pod. So I know Julio is very disappointed, as he's a really big fan of, my grandfather, and especially the book Fall River Dreams. If you've never read it, it's definitely a great book done by Bill Reynolds of the I think Providence Journal. But it's a great book, great story. And yeah, so Julio was definitely bummed he couldn't be part of this interview, but he had emailed me a bunch of questions that he wanted me to ask my grandfather, and they were some really good questions. So also, it is Mother's Day, so happy Mother's Day to all the great moms out there, especially to my mom. Happy Mother's Day, Mom. So the intro of this will be pretty short, just to give some people some background who don't know me very well. I actually have some really good roots in my family tree. So I got, obviously, who we're interviewing today, my grandfather Skip Karam. Also on my other side, another legend of Durfee High School, Ray Medeiros, who's a great baseball coach, won a state championship at Durfee. And I really credit both of them and my dad to my upbringing in sports, and that's where I got the passion from. Skippy, or I call him Jadu, and my papa, which I call Ray. That's why I call Ray Medeiros. They were big influences. Baseball and basketball. I loved both growing up. Eventually basketball became my main thing, but baseball was huge in my life until I was probably a junior and senior in high school, where then you kind of have to specify what sport you're going to really focus on. But both great teachers, both very different people. My grandfathers, my Skippy's very vocal, and Ray's kind of laid back. And I want to credit both of them. I think I've taken both. They were great coaches in different ways, and I've definitely have both of that in my DNA. And I try to be kind of a mix in between both of their styles, because I think both styles do work. They've taught me a lot, and I appreciate them both, and my dad and my pops. So I do hope you enjoy this interview with Tom Skip Karam. And it definitely was great for me. I got to go to his house. I'm fully vaccinated now, and so is he, and I was able to finally be around him without a mask on. So it was great to just be in the same room. Kind of just, it's almost like just talking, right? To me, it might sound like an interview, but it's really just me just talking with my grandfather, and you can't take those moments for granted. So I hope you guys enjoy it. Here is the interview with Skip Karam. All right. Welcoming into the podcast is this week's guest is Skip Karam, Thomas Skip Karam, I should say. He is my grandfather. He's also a Durfee High School basketball coach legend. He coached for 35 years. And he also is in the Massachusetts Basketball Hall of Fame. And I'm very happy I can have him on. I'm actually recording this with him at the house. We're both vaccinated, COVID-19 vaccinated, so I was able to do this. And it's actually the first time I've seen him in person without a mask in a while. So, Skippy, or I should say, I call him Jadu. So, Jadu, how you doing? Thanks for joining us.
Good. Nice to be here.
All right, Jadu. I think there's a lot of questions I could ask you, and a lot of answers I already know, because since I probably asked you them since I was probably 5 years old. But one of the first questions I'm going to go off, because Julio's not obviously doing this interview. He was very upset. He could not do this interview, as Julio's a huge fan of the Fall River Dreams book. It's a book by Bill Reynolds, correct?
Right, in the Providence Journal.
Providence Journal, and he wrote that book during one of how many? It was the year with Chrissy was a junior, so that was one of your last few seasons coaching, right?
Yes.
Okay, so Julio's a big fan. I'm obviously read the book a lot too. So, the first question is from Julio. After reading the book, knowing you a little personally, I knew how competitive you are as a basketball coach. How much of an adjustment was it for you to let Bill Reynolds, author of The Fall River Dreams, in your daily activities?
It was kind of tough at the beginning, but after being with us the whole season, it was like he was just like part of the whole team.
So did you trust him not to publicly portray you in a bad light, or also did you
I trusted him.
Yeah. How did the making of the book come out? But I think he was very intrigued to. Or did he ask you to come on?
Yes.
And then you kind of just and like you said, I think I've asked you this before, is that you said that you knew that you had to try to be on your best behavior at times, but then there's times you're so used to him being there that you still acted the way
exactly
you always were,
which wasn't great.
Yeah. So I mean, you coached for 35 seasons. I would like to say one of my questions is, how you were in your 20s, right, when you first got.
Yes.
And you took over after someone that coached you, the legend of who the field house is named after, Luke Urban. How hard was that to transition into your first couple seasons as a head coach, being that young?
It wasn't easy because he was a legend himself, and he played for Boston College, basketball, football, hockey, and he had a great career at Durfee. He won New England tournaments and state tournaments, but he was a great coach.
And I think you and I have talked, and I've asked you questions about how Luke Urban was a coach, and you said he was one of the toughest coaches you ever had.
Oh yeah.
And I think it's kind of crazy when you think about how I see coaches now have to coach these days compared to when you were coaching. Did you model a lot of the things that he did when you started coaching? Because I feel like that's what I know when I first started coaching, I started doing a lot of things that Rob Stanicola, my college coach, did, and drills and stuff like that, or his personality. You almost take on some of that, right?
Yes, he was very helpful. He was ready. Anytime I asked him a question about coaching and all that, he was not afraid to tell me, give me information, and he was very helpful.
So, one of Julio's questions about Luke Urban was, in the book it says you took over after age 26. So there you go. Julio knew it. I didn't. So too bad he's not here. How was that transition? How hard was it to avoid the comparisons and try to pave your own way? Because, Luke Urban coached for 20 seasons, was 253 and 99. That was his record, 72% win percentage. So, how hard was it to, create your own culture and your own...
It wasn't easy. And, I played a lot of basketball, but I had never coached much. And I had coached 2 years before I went to Durfee. I coached at Westport High School, first as a JV coach and a varsity coach 1 year. Then I went to Durfee. And I was way behind coaching, believe me. I was not afraid to ask questions, and I went to clinics, which helped. And, here I am, retired at how many years?
So that's, it's funny you bring up Westport, because obviously I went to Westport High School. Westport High School was a little different back then when you were coaching, huh?
Yes.
So I guess from there, you've had a lot of great teams at Durfee. You won 5 state championships. You were 645, in 145. So, that's a 82% win percentage. And you set all these types of records, and you coached for 35 seasons. I guess I feel like one of the staples of teams when I've watched film growing up as a kid was the Mike Herron teams. And Mike Herron obviously was a great player and one of the best probably in his era. What were some of the moments you remember about him on the court or off the court during those early state championship runs? Like, what kind of player was he, if you had to describe him?
Mike was a winner, and he was tough. He's very aggressive on the court, and he just and the kids followed him. They followed him. They were afraid not to make mistakes, not because of the coach, because of him.
Isn't it special to have a player like that? Because I don't know how, like, when you think of the basketball landscape today, NBA, anything, college, it seems like everything's number driven. And when I look at Mike's career, if you would have asked me like what I thought of Mike Heron, I would just say, well, he was a winner. He won 2 state championships. His teams were back-to-back years of being undefeated. And I don't know how many points or rebounds or whatever he averaged, because I don't think that matters. So was it special coaching a player that really, at the end of the day, only cared about winning?
It was very special.
Yeah.
Very special.
Do you think that lacks in today's, like, what you see in basketball, where it's more stats driven and points driven? Do you feel like that the win-loss thing is kind of...
I'm not sure what goes on in some of these, schools, but we just worked hard at it, and I followed a great coach, and it wasn't easy following him. He was unbelievable.
So Julio has a good question. I know some of these, some of the answer to this, but what's a typical Skip Karam practice look like? What would it look like back then?
We ran a lot. We ran like a lot of teams do, a lot of drills, and half court scrimmages, full court, and it was no nonsense.
Yeah. Did you make a lot of kids run?
A lot of laps.
My funniest.
Then I would forget.
I was gonna say the funniest stories you ever told me was about. Was it Milt? Milt Rebel. Now he's one of your good friends, but he played for you, and that you made him run, whatever the reason may be.
Right.
And you you forgot that he was running, so he ran for the whole practice.
Well, he came by. I says, "Why are you running?" He says, "Because you told me to." I said, "Well, keep running."
Yeah, that has to be one of my favorite stories. You have a million of them, but that's definitely one of my favorites. In your 30s, you were considering coaching at the college level. What was was that your goal, or before you became the coach of Durfee, did you ever like, hey, I want to coach at high school? Because that's what some people do. Coach, establish themselves and then try to move up the ranks.
I didn't think about it until I was coaching in high school.
Yeah.
I applied 1 year to Providence College as an assistant coach. And that was the only place I think I tried.
Yeah. So...
Because I had graduated from Providence.
Well, I wanted to hit on that because a lot of people know you as the basketball coach, and I don't think a lot of people really know you as a player. You played at Providence College, and you were gonna you had a scholarship.
I was a sub at Providence College.
but really you were playing a Division I college, and didn't it become like transportation? You couldn't get there.
Right. I didn't have I commuted.
Yeah.
I commuted to Providence every day.
Yeah.
And even after practice, I had to thumb home. After a while, it got out of hand.
How would you describe yourself as a player?
How was I?
Were you like me?
I didn't have a good attitude.
But you were.
But I respected my coaches.
Mm-hmm. And I think that respecting your coaches, and also I know you as a coach, golfer. You're a competitor, and I always ask this: do you think being competitive is a nature thing? Like, do you think you're born with it, or do you think that you could learn to be a competitor?
I think I was born with it.
Yeah, and I think you passed it on to me for sure. Because we always talk about that, like how do you make someone be more competitive? And I said sometimes it's just, I've coached kids who are just really nice kids. They just don't have that. It's not in them.
Right, exactly.
And sometimes it's too much. I think I had, I've that. We always joke about the Karam blood, and that sometimes that shows.
Yeah, I misbehaved an awful lot on the bench.
One of the going back to Durfee from Julio, I fell in love with the culture of Durfee and Fall River. Tough, no nonsense, hardworking. Was it a challenge for you to mentor or coaching kids from that area, knowing that the highlight of some of their lives would be playing for Durfee?
Yeah, it was tough, and I didn't substitute an awful lot, so that was not good for the team morale.
Yeah.
But that's the way I was coached, and I continued to coach the same way.
For the listeners listening to this, when he says that he didn't sub, just kind of give you an example of this was one time they were playing Somerset and they were up, I believe you told him, well, I think I've seen the video. You're up 25 with about 2 minutes to go. You know, the game's in hand. And you put in the subs. And I think the Somerset scored 2 baskets in a row. You pulled all the subs out, put the stars back in.
I don't remember that.
But, as funny as, I always laughed at that, and you could say, well, that was mean of you and all that. But, I think that sets a precedent of culture, and I think that, hey, when it's your chance to get in the game, whether it's a blowout or not, you should be playing hard.
Right.
And that's your opportunity to show the coach, who you are. And I know, you only played 5 to 6 guys, but I think that says something about, who it's just in your DNA. You didn't give up coaching in that game. You didn't sit down and say, all right, well, subs are in, they'll play out the rest of the game.
Exactly.
And I respect that, but I think it is a funny story. They're all out. Starters back in. So when I think about you coaching, and I know this is a tough question for you, but obviously I think Mike Herron's team was the best team you ever coached. Just obviously they won back-to-back state championships, didn't lose. What were some other teams that you really enjoyed coaching through your 35 years? I know there was a lot.
State championships in '84.
Yep. And who was on that team?
Brian O'Neill.
Yep.
Who went on, had a good career at Stonehill.
Mm-hmm.
And Kenny Fiola. He played at BU.
Vic Pereira was on that team.
Vic Pereira, yep. Had a good college career, too, in Connecticut.
Yeah.
Had a lot of good kids.
Yeah. And, I think when you think about coaching, we always talk about you can be a great coach yourself, but you also need great players and kids that
There's no doubt about it.
And kids that are willing to buy in.
Right. We had a good tradition here, before me.
Mm-hmm.
And
you just took the torch.
yes, we're lucky enough to have the talent.
I guess, what was it like coaching? And I think you and I have talked about this. It's so different from going from a player to a coach. When you're a player, I never really got nervous. But when I started being a coach, whether it was assistant at Durfee, North Andover, I was really nervous going into games as a coach. And because, in my opinion, you don't really have a lot of control. You have some control as a coach, but you don't. Right. You're not playing in the game. So, tell me what it was like, and I know the answer, but I'd like you to tell the listeners, what was it like for you, for any game, how you felt?
I was afraid all the time, mm-hmm. no matter who we played. And I'd go into the game really thinking we could get beat tonight.
Yeah.
And we won by 30. And I said, this is crazy. Why was I so nervous? But it will continue on for the rest of the year.
Do you think that's also because, the tradition you built, you were such a powerhouse that, you knew that you were going to get everybody's best?
There's no doubt about that.
And then when you're a top dog, you don't want someone to, upset you because it looks bad on you. And that you weren't prepared. But being nervous about every team, and I think you kind of put that in my mind when I used to play at Westport, because obviously we didn't play great competition, but I always took every game serious because someone could give you the best and you get knocked off.
Yep.
Did you eat a lot before the games?
Never.
And you used to tell me the story about
I never had supper.
I remember your assistant Dempsey would always, what would he shove down his face before every game?
He'd come on the bus with a big grinder.
And eat it right in front of you.
Yeah, because being a JV coach, he wasn't as uptight as I was.
Yeah, and I mean, talk about the atmospheres you played in. I used to watch some of the games, and it was just, I've played it in front of some, decently big crowds, but some of the atmosphere, you'd have 3,000-4,000 people, standing room only in those gyms.
Yeah, especially when we played New Bedford, our arch rival.
Yeah, that also plays into how nervous you were as a coach, right?
Right. And when tournament time came around, monstrous crowds.
And talk about like, those atmospheres in tournament time, and it's like you could have with Mike Herron's team, you could be undefeated, but it's still one game, lose and go home.
Exactly.
So who are some in your mind, like who are some like really good tournament games that you played? And I know you've lost at Heartbreakers when you played Brockton and that kid hit a half court buzzer beater. Was it Brockton? I think it was Brockton, right?
No.
Was
Well,
that
they hit a
wrong?
last second shot.
Yeah. It was at, I think it was
It
Christie's,
was
right?
at the Boston Garden. Yes.
Yeah. So that's what I'm saying. So you've felt the accomplishments of winning a state championship. Do you feel like when you won one, like something was taken off your back because you won one?
Yes, to a certain degree, but
But you're always waiting for the next one.
the following year it comes around, that's gone.
So like,
Everybody wants you.
what were some of your, obviously you've won 5 state championships, which is a crazy amount of state championships, but also talk about like, what was it like to lose heartbreaking losses like that?
Wasn't nice.
Like what do you say in the locker room to those kids?
Not too much.
I mean, yeah.
They didn't want to hear from me anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I remember being with North Andover when we lost in the state semifinals. We were one game away from the state championship game, and it was really hard for me. I just said I was proud of them, but it was tough because it's like, what do you say? You know how bad they feel.
I know.
But you also gotta just, I guess, respect what a great season they had, and not sometimes you come up short.
They get over it,
Yeah, you do, but some people never do.
but the coach doesn't.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I mean, you really don't. So Julio said, who were some of the other local coaches in the area that you really respected? He said, I read the book The Assist, and they talked about Jack O'Brien from Charlestown High School. He mentioned Coach Fazio from Andover, and then Julio said, and not you, not you.
Yeah.
What kind of shit is that?
I don't know what that means.
Well, I guess there was a book called The Assist, and they were mentioning some of the great high school coaches, and they said the book didn't mention you, and he said, what kind of shit is that?
Well, being down here in Fall River,
Yeah.
50 miles away from Boston,
You sometimes go under the radar.
right?
But
But that's all right.
Well, the funny thing is, like, if I say your name, people can't, like, fathom that I'm your grandson. Like, they'll know you, and I'm like, oh, it's my grandfather.
Yeah.
Like, get out of here. I'm like, yeah, I'm serious. But, so, I kind of know some of the great coaches. So he wants to know, what are some local coaches that, like, during your time coaching, who you really respected and who are really good coaches?
Ooh, what was I? Let's see. Oh, Eddie Rodriguez, I had a tough time with him at Coach New Bedford High School.
Yeah.
He had a good record against me.
Yeah. Also had some really good players.
Yes, well, it was a good rivalry.
Yeah. What I thought was cool, just to talk about Eddie Rodriguez, is that when I was in high school, you actually set me up with him to do those workouts. You remember at UMass Dartmouth?
Oh, that's right, yeah.
Yeah, and he played a really good, helpful role in my development as a player. He was really into it.
He had a good
so.
career. I'm surprised he got out. He got out about 4 or 5 years ago, and I thought he'd come back somewhere.
Yeah. I know he was a big rock. Was there any other? I mean, it was really tough down in, like you said, in this part of Mass, because you played in a league called the Big Three. It was you, New Bedford, and Brockton. Really, no one else was on any of your level until you got to the state tournament. Correct?
What happened? Nobody else wanted us in their league,
Yeah.
so we had to form our own league, which was terrible.
Yeah.
A 3-team league.
And you guys just kind of battle it out with each other. Yeah.
Brockton always had terrific teams. They still have.
Yeah, terrific. I mean, when you talk about a school, you, New Bedford and Brockton, you guys have ginormous. Well, Brockton more has a ginormous population.
Right.
And I've kind of seen that firsthand coaching up where in the Merrimack Valley there, you got Lowell, you got Lawrence.
Yep.
They're just always loaded because they have 6,000 kids in this school. It's hard to run out of talent when you have that many kids you're pulling from. So
You need talent to win, believe me.
You knew Chris Herron was going to be a great player at an early age. How hard was it for you to let him go as a player? In a sense, you had to adjust your coaching philosophy for him somewhat, because I think we've talked about this, is that you got to that when you were coaching in the 90s. It started to turn where kids weren't the same kids. How they acted.
Right.
So did you have to kind of adjust how you were coaching him, because you guys kind of butted heads a lot?
Well, yeah, he wasn't the only one I butted heads with.
I know that.
But he was tremendous. I mean, he was.
And that's what I'm saying. Like, sometimes you just had to swallow your pride sometimes just to let him be who he was.
Yep, you let him go.
Yeah. Like, you didn't really have to really run much, like, plays and
We
stuff.
tried.
Yeah, well, because he would just go off script because he's just that talented.
A lot of teams played zone against him. Against
because
us,
he struggled
so,
to shoot.
No, they just...
That was the
I
slow
figured
down.
it was easier than playing man-to-man.
Did that affect you guys?
To a certain degree.
Yeah.
Yeah, some nights.
Do you know at the middle school level, that's all they play is 2-3 zone?
Is that
Do
right?
you think that's good coaching your kids just to play a 2-3 zone?
It depends what you have. That's for sure.
I get very frustrated Jid, in 2-3 zones. Because what I've seen is that most of these kids get to the height, and you played man-to-man most of the time, right? Obviously, coaching, right? You got to play. I'm not poo-pooing zones for anybody listening. Sometimes you have to play a
We
zone.
played a lot of zone, too.
Yeah, you got to play zone sometimes, depending on your matchup. Sometimes you got teams who are just killing you out, going off the dribble. But, like, don't you think that it's important at a youth level to teach kids how to play man-to-man concepts?
Yeah, because eventually
You have to.
you're going to be playing for somebody that plays man all the time.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the biggest things that I see at the high school level is just that not a lot. When they come to that first varsity practice or, first high school trial, I'm like, wow, these kids suck playing defense. But it's not really their fault. They've been playing standing in a zone
Yep, exactly.
at the middle school level because kids can't, guard them. Or, I'm sorry. You pack it in because most kids can't shoot, I should say, at that level. So,
Yep.
So Julio says, if you don't want to ask him this one, don't. Did you know that Chris Herron was struggling with upholding the legacy of his brother when he became the star player at Durfee? And were there any conversations you had with him?
Not really. No, we just went out there and played. He knew what his brother did, and he wanted to, follow his footsteps. But he didn't have the supporting cast that his brother actually had. I don't know if his brother needed him, but
yeah, that says a lot, right? You got to have. You can't just have one good player.
No.
And I know Chrissy wasn't. Jeff Karen was a great player, but like you're saying an overall team that Mike played for. Do you think? Do you think that some of that played a part in his extracurricular activities, as Julio would call it? No,
I wouldn't even talk about that.
Yeah, the way I look at Chris when I read some of the stories or even his book, I think he sometimes did have trouble playing in his brother's legacy. It's almost, I kind of not compare it, but like I saw it with Ryan when Ryan played at Westport after I graduated when he was a junior. I feel like he played like he was trying to fill my shoes. Like everybody looked like he was trying to, be what I was.
It was tough. It was tough for him.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about it.
And that's kind of what I think about when I saw this question that Julio had. And I thought it was a good question. That sometimes it's hard to, and that's why I asked you at the beginning with Luke Urban. I think sometimes it's hard. You try to fill someone's shoes when Ryan, my brother, was a senior, he had a great year because I think he just played free and was like, I'm a different player than Matt. And I think Chris probably got to that point too. You just got to be yourself and do what you do well. Resources and everything. Obviously, when you and Mike and Chris Herron were they were getting recruited, you were in contact with many college coaches. Did you use some of those relationships to get other guys recruited later on after they graduated?
Well, we really didn't have Division I players.
It was very cut and dry.
There might have been one or two more, but it was tough.
Do you feel like that you got to meet and create some relationships with some big name college coaches because of like Chris and Mike and other guys who were D1 recruits?
UConn.
Calhoun.
Yeah. Who coached high school basketball in Massachusetts. He coached at, I can't even think of the name of the school, but he coached at Northeastern.
Yep.
Before he went, big time with Connecticut. Time goes by. I forget.
Yeah. Well, you said Patino. You had like a relationship with him because
Yes.
he was recruiting Chrissy.
He wanted Chrissy at Kentucky.
Yeah.
But
Because didn't Patino come and talk at one of your
a banquet? Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
at one of your banquets? I remember that. So I think that's pretty cool that you get to meet some names like that.
Yeah, I met a lot of people.
Was it crazy, Chris's recruiting process? Like how many people really wanted him? Like
Yeah, there was about 5 interviews.
Jeez. All coming to Fall River.
Yep.
That's crazy.
Syracuse wanted him badly.
Wait, did you start playing 2-3 zone? If you had to put a label on success besides winning it all, what did you personally consider a successful season at Durfee? I think winning it all, right?
There's no doubt about it. If you didn't win the state championship around here, wasn't good.
Yeah,
good
I
year.
mean, you played in a time where that was it.
Yeah.
Right? There's no, hey, we made it to the finals. I think about that playing at Westport is that I made it to the South Sectional Finals 3 times and lost. And like you can say, oh, well, you got there. Well, I lost.
Yep.
And that's a competitor. That's why I think that question is like to you that was success. If you don't win it all, what are we really doing?
Exactly.
And that was the pressure you had, right?
Yep.
After you were done coaching, you had. Well, this is from Julio. I wouldn't ask this question. After you were done coaching, you had grandkids who played high school and collegiate sports. What changed from your time coaching to the time you watched us play?
In regards to what? What changed what?
Like what was it like? I guess sitting in the stands now and not coaching.
It was tough.
Why?
Because you could see what they were doing, and you thought maybe she should be doing something else out there as a player and as a coach.
Well, I think a fun nugget is that you actually almost thought about applying for, or they asked you. I forgot how it worked. Remember when I was a freshman and Westport was looking for a new coach after, I think Tim Plant left. He was a great coach at Westport. He was leaving, and you thought about maybe coaching, or maybe that was a rumor.
That was a rumor.
Because I think you said you couldn't deal with parents and the commutes anymore. But
I really didn't have a tough time with the parents, to tell you the truth.
Yeah.
It was not bad.
When you were coaching?
Yes.
I think nowadays you would.
I would think. I would
Because
say.
it's just parents have changed.
Yep.
Because, from my perspective, it's like now it's, well, what's the coach doing wrong? Where if the coach tells you to do something, I would go home. Whether he's right or wrong, my parents, Kev and Jen, would just say, well, he's the coach.
Yep.
So you got to listen to him. But unfortunately, that's not how it is anymore.
No.
Which is sad. So I guess when you were going to games, you were very vocal. I know that.
Your games you talk about? Yeah, I was bad.
Well, you were bad with all the referees knew who you were. That's for sure. And
No, I don't think so. Up in college?
No, not college. High school.
Oh, yes.
They knew who you were.
Exactly.
They knew where you sat. It was. I would say it was challenging for me as a player having you in the stands because I knew you knew a lot about the game, so I'd be trying to listen to you, but also trying to listen to my coach. So it was a balancing act, I think. But I always appreciated those phone calls after the game. You would tell me what I was doing wrong and doing right. And I've also had the pleasure of sitting with you at Ryan and Sam's games in high school. Those were entertaining.
Yep.
Your commentary is unbelievable.
Not too good.
Can we tell the story? A couple stories when you used to come to my games at St. Joe's. Do you remember the time at Emerson? What happened? The one you were sitting across, and the fans told you to sit down and shut up.
Yeah.
And you yelled.
You shut up.
Yeah. So just to give you a little background, we're playing at Emerson College. It's not a really big gym in Boston, and Skippy's sitting on one end of the court, and there's maybe 10 college students sitting on the other side, and it's shooting free throws, and Skippy was complaining to the ref about some saying he's a homer.
About a call.
Yeah, being a homer ref, and one of the kids said, "Hey, old man, sit down and shut up." And Skippy stood up and said, "Hey, why don't you sit down and shut up?" And it was dead quiet, and I was sitting there, and then after the game, it was funny because you said, "You think your teammates know who I am?" I go, "Well, they do now." That was a good one. And then also at St. Joe's, when you were sitting and one of the sisters, the nuns, were at the game, and you yelled, "Jesus Christ."
I forget.
And she turned around. You said, "What? I'm just saying a prayer."
I didn't say that.
Yeah, you did. That's what you told me. You were praying.
The nun told me to take it easy.
Yeah, take it easy. Julio wanted to know, did you enjoy watching how we played at St. Joe's?
Yes, very much.
What did you like about it?
I thought the coach had very good control of the team. Mm-hmm. He ran a lot of nice stuff. and he was a good guy to coach for,
Yeah. Did you think?
to play for.
Yeah. No. He was great to play for. Did you think that I would have the college career that I did in high school? I always ask this to like people like my dad. I don't think my dad thought I was going to be a college player even when I was in high school,
He
or at
did?
least have the career I had.
I thought you'd be a college player, but it depends what people are looking for. You know, what division, and so forth and so on.
And I think you had a good point. It's also what situation you put yourself in.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, St. Joe's was a great situation for me.
It was.
The stuff they ran and all that.
It was nice up there.
Yeah.
The only thing was so long a ride.
Yeah, we know you didn't like the rides. We know you didn't like the rides up there. Julio wanted to know, can you describe each of your grandchildren's games?
I don't understand that.
Yeah, it's kind of like a hip question, huh?
Yeah.
Like, how would you describe me as a player?
Excellent. What else?
I don't know. That's what he wanted to know. That was one of his last
I thought you
questions.
could have played Division One.
Why is that?
Because maybe guys, I saw you all the time.
Yeah, maybe.
I know how you could play.
Well, maybe. I always say if you didn't give me these Lebanese genes of being 5'11", I could have. How would you? I guess. How would you describe like Ryan's game? I could describe his game, how he played.
Ryan,
Yeah,
he did a good job.
yeah. But, like I'm saying, what did he do well to you? I guess.
Good ball handler, a streaky shooter.
Yeah.
Once
He
he
got
got
hot,
hot,
he
sometimes
got hot.
it's tough.
Yeah. And then how would you describe Samantha's game? I always say Samantha was very physical.
Yes, well, she had good size.
She had good size, and she was good around the basket. Where she was, I always try to explain that we all had different games. That's why he was asking. Like I was different from Ryan. Ryan was different from Samantha. We all had different parts of our game. I always credit my love for basketball and just sports in general from you. My other grandfather, Ray Medeiros, who was a great baseball coach at Durfee, and then my dad. But I was obsessed as a kid of basketball and baseball. But basketball became my passion as I got older. But I always try to teach kids now the same stuff you used to teach me, shooting in the backyard. So if anybody wants to know why I became a good shooter, it's a combination of Skippy, my dad, and just a lot of reps. But I still use your line, and a couple people love this line. When I see a kid shoot an air ball, I go, I would shoot an air ball in a hurricane. That's a Skippy line. It's a great one. So I guess a couple of other questions I have before we end. What do you see in today's basketball game that's just so different from when you were coaching, or
Well, it depends what level you're talking about.
just say at the high school level, what's so different?
They play out of control.
Yeah,
Most of the games are out of control. Up and down, up and down, up and down. Some guys do a great job. Other guys don't. It looks like they just roll the ball out.
at practice.
Yeah,
You're saying.
let's go.
I couldn't agree with you more. I think people say, well, the game has changed. Well, has the game changed, or has the coaches changed, and how people play? Because I've always said this: why play up and down, out of control, if that's not your strength?
Right. Exactly.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I think in my time at North Andover or at Durfee, like I've seen what happens when you play out of control when it's not good for you. There's some teams that can do it really well because that's how they muck up the game and how they play, and that's their style. But I feel like kids feel like they're restrained when you do that because they see how everybody else is playing.
You're right.
Which is sad.
It is.
Because you could have success playing a different way. And I think, like you said at St. Joe's, one of the reasons we had success when I was when I was there, do you think we beat, you remember those team like Albertus, how good they were? Do you think we would have beat them playing like they played? No. You just couldn't. They had better athletes, and bigger guys. So yeah, I think that's a really good point. What would you say has changed maybe at the college or the NBA level? Same thing, or
To a certain degree, everybody.
just more shooting, right?
Yeah, I see guys 6'10", 7 feet. They're playing in the corners in the pros. I mean, there's no center anymore.
Yeah. Do you? Well, that just kind of made me think about that story. So I teach PE at Pike, physical education at Pike right now, as well as being the athletic director. When I think of PE, my grandfather actually taught PE at one time at Durfee High School. And one of my favorite stories, because I think about teaching now, is what was the player's name? I just drew a blank. Who's the guy you had at the end of the court?
End of the court.
Remember you had him on the baseline and you had the rest of the class. You work on his...
Oh, Ernie Fleming.
You had Ernie Fleming, who was a really good basketball player.
Poor kid passed away.
Passed away.
Played for Jacksonville.
Yep. Really good player. Rest in peace. He was in my grandfather's PE class, and there's probably like 90 kids in the class, and 89 of them are on one side of the gym doing God knows what, just here's a ball, go do something. And my grandfather's working on Ernie Fleming's post game with him on the other end.
You're getting me into trouble.
That is a great story. Wow, how times have changed. I think I'd be fired in about 30 seconds if I did that. But talk about that. I think at one time you were the basketball coach, the athletic director,
and the vice principal.
At one time.
That was not easy.
I think about it just at my standpoint, being a teacher, being the AD, being, doing stuff outside. Like, it's a lot. So how did you manage all that?
I had a tough time.
And how long did you do those three roles for at the same time?
A couple of years.
Yeah. And what,
Then I became a full-time athletic director.
Yeah, I was gonna say. So you were that's why you took on the other role of vice principal, because the AD job wasn't full time.
Right.
At the time.
Right.
Why did they change it into a full-time job?
Depends. Yeah. You have to ask the superintendent.
Yeah. Well, that's pretty wild. For all three positions and throughout a school day.
Yeah.
Doing all three. Was it hard being the athletic director and the basketball coach?
Yes.
Just because how could you focus on?
Because if the basketball team had two new balls, all the other teams want to know how come they're not getting out.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It must have been a hard thing to balance. Is there anything else you want to talk about?
Oh, it was a long career. I had a good time, a lot of great nights and a lot of tough nights when you lose. And playing at Boston Garden, that was a big thrill as a player and as a coach. And I remember Red Auerbach coming over to the bench at one of my games and asked me if I wanted to work at his basketball camp. Red Auerbach asking me.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah, and I said, I'd love to. He says, okay. He says, we'll send you some stuff. So I went down there and I got sick.
Didn't get to do it?
No, I came home. I didn't work the weekend. But it was a big thrill. Red Auerbach asking me to coach at his camp.
Wow. I actually didn't know that story, and I know a lot of your stories.
One night, Ernie Fleming, who we're waiting for one of the games to be over, he's standing there, the doorway at the Boston Garden, and Sam Jones comes over. And he says, hey, aren't you Ernie Fleming from Durfee? And Ernie says to me, yeah, who are you? I said, Ernie. I was embarrassed. I said, this is Sam Jones.
Who are you? Yeah, that's quite a line. So now that obviously you've been retired for a long time, and now that all your grandkids are done playing basketball, what are some things that you do to keep yourself busy?
Nothing.
Well, I know you don't like watching the Celtics.
Yeah, I'm watching. What else is there to do at night?
Yeah, that's true. I try not to. People ask me, do I take on the Skippy Karam? I try to behave myself.
Yes, do that.
Yes, that's one thing you always told me.
I had a bad reputation. Yeah. It was bad. And no excuses either. Yeah. Well, you were one of those. I try to blend my style of coaching. I try to be disciplined. Right, because I think, like you always say, it was very disciplined. When you have practice, it's to.
I think you have to, and you set that precedent. And I think I try to be disciplined with kids, and try to teach them the right things. But I also know that nowadays kids are just different. Like when I was a player, you could say whatever you want to me as a coach. Some of these kids are just they get in their heads. You say the wrong thing. So I think if they know you care about them as a person, then they can respond better when you are tough on them. But yeah, I behave myself with the refs. I have gotten in trouble with a couple of refs, but again, I never said some of the stuff you said.
Like
There's
what?
a place in the Armory in Fall River where we used to play basketball. There's a dent in one of the stands, and it's always known because Skippy put a dent in there because he used to kick it, right?
With the back of the foot.
Back of the foot. There's a nice dent. I don't know if that's a true story, but that's what you used to always tell me, which I thought was funny.
It did. That's why my legs are fouled up today.
Yeah, so my grandfather is also very amazed by the technology that we have here, even though all I have is a laptop and a little mic. But you said some things. What are some things that you regret when you were coaching?
My behavior on the bench.
Yeah,
It was not good.
a lot of technical fouls.
Yeah, and I cost my team some games, and I acted like a fool.
Do you think that during those times, do you think most of those techs now? I know you got a lot throughout your career, which I've only gotten one tech in my life.
Terrific for you.
As an 8th grade basketball player.
That was from the other side of the family.
Yeah, that's what you always say. But I'm usually pretty behaved. When you got these technical fouls, do you feel like a lot of times were you young when a lot of these, when your temper flare and all that, or it was just throughout your career? That's just
throughout the career.
That's just how your temper was.
I didn't get any better.
And then once you had that, you had a reputation, so some people just kept you on a short leash, right?
Exactly.
And I think that's the toughest thing is when I tell players, or I think as myself as a coach, if I'm rude or obviously sometimes you have to tell the official like, hey, I think they're wrong. Like I think that's, or I'm going to at bat for my player. Like, hey, you got to call that. Like someone's gonna get hurt.
It depends how you do it.
Correct, but like I tell my players is once you start complaining, do you think that ref is gonna call you one call? And that's the way I try to do as a coach. I say, let me talk to the refs because usually I'm pretty well mannered and I try. Like some officials, they're out there and it's their show, right? They're making a show of it, which stinks. But I'm gonna go to at bat and try to get calls from my players. But yeah, I think it's tough that you don't want to build that reputation that once they're gonna go everything against you.
Because I got put out one game in the first half. And the policeman who was working at the game escorted me off the court, and the policeman that I knew, and he was kind of almost laughing.
Oh Lord, yeah. I mean, I guess another question I had, because I think we've talked about this with another guest that we had on the podcast, and I think his perspective was he was a player who played for his father in high school. So how hard was it for you to coach my uncle, Skippy Jr.? Was it really hard to have your son on your team?
Yeah, it wasn't easy.
Yeah. And why do you think it's so hard? Because you have to almost have like a balancing act of like, you can't be easy on him,
right? Because
he's your son, and then other players will think, well, he's just babying his son. But then also it's hard to be really hard on them because then they might take it personally and like screws up like a relationship you have with as a kid.
It wasn't a good time.
Yeah. And we talk about that, and I think it's a very challenging thing. And I wonder, some people like will be very hands off, if they had to be a coach of their kid. But I see a lot of I see a lot of people struggle with it. There's really no easy way to do it, right?
Not at all.
I mean, some people have figured out. Like one of the guests we had on, Brendan Phelps, he said, there was some bad times, but they're also like they handled it pretty well in the scheme of things. But there's some ugly times. So, but I always think that's interesting. I wonder how I would have liked you being my coach. I
remember after one game, it almost got physical with my son because he was talking back, and after I grabbed him
and said, "You said go tell your mother.
Go home and tell your mother. See if I care."
That's a good line. That's the only reason I remember that line's from the book.
Is it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Go tell your mother. Yeah, I think it's a very challenging thing to have. Just because, like I said, you don't want to be easy on your kid.
No,
because then people look at you different.
Exactly.
And that was the challenging thing. I think sometimes when people are like, oh, that's Skippy's grandson, like me. Or Ryan or Sam, like there's like an expectation that you have to be a good basketball player
or a good kid, yeah.
Or a good, I couldn't be like you in the sense of like temperament. But yeah, I think that was a challenging aspect of playing, and people introducing me as, oh, this is Skippy's grandson. So But I also wanted to make a name for myself, which I think I did a decent
I think you
job.
did.
What another
Not that I think you did. You did.
another good question I have actually. Did you ever think about what it would be like if I ended up going to Durfee instead of Westport High School to play? Do you ever think about that or no? I always think about that.
I wish you had.
Yeah, why is that? Just because of the legacy?
No, because your ability.
Yeah. But also Durfee, I feel like Durfee, had some challenging times during those years.
Yeah.
And going to Westport, I was, I had some really good athletes around me. Obviously, the downside of playing at Westport, to your point, is that I played that lesser competition than I would at Durfee. Durfee, I would have played better competition all the time. And Westport's
bigger schools and that.
bigger schools, yeah. I mean, it would have been cool repping the red and black just because all my family did.
But you would have handled it easy.
Yeah.
Not easy. You would have handled it. There's no doubt about it.
I know that. But definitely would have been bigger expectations. What do you think? Going off that point when I just said Durfee, had some struggling times just record wise, and when you left Durfee, what do you think attributes to like the culture that because I coached at Durfee for one season. The culture isn't the way it was when you were there.
No, times have changed. There's no doubt about it. Kids don't go out like they did.
Yeah. I like to your point, I just feel like there's more kids out there that are harder to coach. Being able to coach some of these kids, parents make it impossible, or just the same type of kids aren't the same type of kids you used to coach, and I think that just has to go with family backgrounds.
Yeah, there's no doubt.
So it's sad to see. I mean, I always hope that Durfee can someday get back to where it was, but.
I don't know. I don't know if that's going to happen.
Yeah. No, and now there's no more Big Three.
No.
Pretty sure that's gotten rid of.
4 now, right?
Well, I think they're all in like some league with like.
No, Dartmouth, Durfee, New Bedford, and Rockland.
Yeah, I think this might be one more.
And who else?
Like Bridgewater, Raynham might be in there. I think.
Yes, that's it.
Yeah. So I don't know. I just because the fear that you have of playing Durfee isn't the same, I guess.
No, not at all.
What are the things that you enjoy to do, other than like doing basketball, like during your time coaching? What were some outlets for you? Because I feel like when I'm coaching, I'm into sports. Like sometimes I need a mental break, and we talk about like golf is a great thing.
A lot of times, it's even the day of a game, like an away game, I'd go down to the country club and play like 4 or 5 holes before.
Just to get your mind off stuff.
Yeah.
Well, I think you've given me the golf bug, so I love playing. It's fun. And it's just so different. But, like, I always tell people it's funny. Like, when I play against people, like, I want to beat them. But, like, I also appreciate when they hit good shots. I'm like, oh, nice shot. Yeah. It's different than basketball. Like, I would never, and I've seen kids say this, which, shit, I almost dropped dead. We were training, I was in that basketball training, and one of these kids got scored on this one-on-one drill. We're doing one-on-one drills, and the kid got scored on. The kid gave him a high five after he got scored on. I think I would punch someone in the face before I would shake their hand after getting scored on. You know what I'm saying? Where in golf, it's a little different. Like, you're so competitive with yourself. But can you imagine?
No, I can't.
Can you imagine shaking someone's hand if they score on you one-on-one?
No. You don't see much of that.
I mean, I played my brother in the yard. If he scored on me, I think we started fighting. But it's just different times we live in.
Yep, certainly.
All right, before we let you go, I know Julio's not here, obviously, but we got to keep the tradition going. He does this little game we call Who What, where we ask, a couple questions with either who or what at the beginning. So the first question I got for you, Jid, is what is your favorite Lebanese dish? Because if you didn't know, my grandfather's Lebanese. So, what is your favorite Lebanese dish?
Actually, 2, kibbe and tabbouleh.
Kibbe and tabbouleh, and you used to make it.
Not really.
No, you never.
Kibbe, I made kibbe.
Yeah, I remember having it. Who is the best player you've ever coached against in high school? And it could be more than one, but I don't know if you have any in your mind.
I would say Ronnie Perry got to be one of them.
What high school did he play for?
He played for Catholic Memorial.
Mm-hmm. I feel like there was one other guy you used to tell me about. He was maybe an NBA player that you coached against. Maybe he was from either Catholic Memorial or
one guy way back, I can't think of his name though. He played for Michigan. Michigan State. I think.
Yeah.
He played for Somerville.
Okay. Yeah. I remember you were telling me a couple other guys. So Ronnie Perry, and he went to
Holy Cross.
Holy Cross. Why do you think he was one of the best players you?
Because he's outstanding.
Yeah. What did he do? Well,
He played at Holy Cross. He had a great career. He did everything.
Yeah.
He's a great scorer. He must average 30 points a game.
Wow. Yeah, I'd say that's pretty good. What is one of your favorite sports memories, whether it was coaching or playing? Either are. Like, what's like a memory that comes to your mind? It's one of your favorites.
I guess winning a state championship, that's got to be one of the tops in coaching.
What about as a player?
As a player, well, I think in one game against New Bedford I had 27, which was a lot in those days. There's no
no three-pointers, even though you could shoot it, right?
Yeah.
What is your favorite summer activity to do?
I guess you have to say the beach.
Yeah, you're a big beach guy.
It used to be golf, but not anymore.
Yeah, golf and the beach. That's two great things, I'll say. I'll keep the tradition going for you.
The clubs are retired.
Yeah, the clubs are retired. I got to grab some golf balls before I leave this.
Yeah.
The golf Skippy has given to me. I got the bug, but the beach, no one knows. Baker's Beach. If you ever with Skippy, he's the mayor. I call him the mayor of the beach. I walk around, I meet everybody. The best part is I'll be like, "Oh, who is that again?" And my grandfather will go, "Oh, I have no idea." But you're really good at playing it off like you do. What do you miss most about coaching or going to our game? Going to your grandkids' games. Like, what will you miss the most about being around that?
Well, it was great watching my grandkids play. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah.
And I missed coaching to a certain degree, but it did a job on me.
Yeah. Yeah, like, you just miss just being in the gym and being in that atmosphere. Because I feel like I miss it just because of COVID. Like, not being able to coach this year for me has been really tough. Like,
I don't miss all the practices and all
that.
I miss the games.
Yeah, it's a grind, right? Yeah. People don't know, like, coaching is such a grind. It takes a lot out of you because, you put a lot into it. The last one I would have is, who is your favorite grandchild? No, I'm just kidding. You don't have to answer that. But, so that'll wrap up the episode. And, again, we appreciate you coming on, Jid. And it was fun talking basketball with you.
When do I get the check?
Yeah, you get the royalty check soon.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, no, it was a pleasure.
Hey, just stay true to yourself. And if nobody wanna help you, you can do it yourself. And if you live and impress others, it's how you losing yourself. And if you keep on running back, you just abusing yourself. Damn. I pray to God that you find your way. And when times is good, don't forget to pray. And be thankful for all the blessings that seem to come your way. Cause that's how more come to you. That's all I had to say.